Chapter 1. A new power emerges. In the eerie calm that followed the tumultuous events of the gods' intervention and winter's apparent demise, the landscape of the supernatural realm began to shift once more. On a seemingly ordinary day, the Necromancer walked alone across a vast, desolate field. The ground beneath his feet was barren, marked by the scars of past battles and the quiet despair that had fallen over the land. As he reached the center of the field, the Necromancer stopped and spread his arms wide, his cloak fluttering in the wind. With a deep, resonant chant, he called upon Necros, the god of the undead, channeling the last vestiges of divine energy that had been discreetly tipped in his favor. In this critical moment, unbeknownst to the other gods, Necros had chosen to alter the balance of power subtly but significantly. Beneath the earth, something stirred. It began as a faint rumbling, then escalated into a cacophony of sounds as hundreds of undead beings clawed their way to the surface. However, these were no ordinary undead. Their eyes burned with the fire of Necros, glowing ominously in the dim light. These new warriors were stronger, more durable, and uniquely impervious to the Elder's shadow attacks, a strategic enhancement by Necros to fortify his legion against their primary weakness. The Necromancer's face split into a wide, satisfied smile as he watched his new army rise. These were not merely undead. They were undead killing machines, each infused with a fragment of divine power that made them a formidable force on the battlefield. With the gods temporarily out of action, recovering from their exertions against Winter, and with Winter himself no longer a player in this grand game, the Necromancer saw an unrivaled opportunity to seize control. As the newly risen undead gathered around him, the Necromancer raised his staff, signaling the beginning of a new phase in the supernatural war. "With this army," he proclaimed, his voice carrying across the windswept field, "we will tip the scales in our favor. The Elders, the Lycans, and any who stand against us will fall." In the distance, the shadows of the Elder's dark castle loomed, a reminder of the battles to come. But with his ranks now bolstered by these powerful new undead, the Necromancer felt a surge of confidence. The sheer number and enhanced capabilities of his forces promised a shift in the power dynamics of the realm, potentially leading to an era dominated by the undead. The implications of this new development begin to ripple across the realm. Allies and enemies alike sense the change, and strategies are hastily redrawn. The supernatural factions will need to respond to this new threat, forging unlikely alliances and confronting internal betrayals, all in a desperate bid to survive in the ever-evolving game of gods and monsters. Will they unite to face this common enemy, or will the realm fracture further under the weight of its own divisions? Descent of darkness. The tranquility of the center camp was shattered by the urgent cries of a scout atop the lookout. "They're back!" he shouted, his voice laced with panic. "More of them!" The alarm bells rang out, piercing the relative calm of the morning and thrusting the camp into a state of emergency. Marco, peering through his binoculars, made a chilling observation that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard. "Look at their eyes. They are like the ones from before," he said, noting the unnatural glow that seemed all too familiar. Alex's response was grim. "If they are, we could be in serious trouble here." The memories of their previous encounters with such formidable foes were fresh, and none were eager to relive those dark moments. Nina, ever decisive, knew what had to be done. "Prepare a full evacuation of this camp," she ordered, her voice resolute despite the rising dread. As they mobilized to evacuate, the newly risen undead smashed against the camp's defenses with terrifying force, ignoring the scarecrows and other diversions that had worked in the past. These undead, smarter, faster, and stronger, began demolishing the barriers. The guards, overwhelmed by the ferocity and resilience of their attackers, quickly fell under their relentless assault. Nothing seemed to stop these enhanced creatures. Their strength was amplified, and their durability surpassed anything the defenders had seen before. After a fierce, one-sided battle, Nina made the heart-wrenching decision to retreat. "Retreat!" she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Alex, Marco, Nina, Rebecca, and around 20 survivors managed to escape, though not without witnessing the fall of their camp to the supernatural undead. The fire in the eyes of their assailants showcased their sheer power, a chilling testament to the Necromancer's success. "We'll need to hurry to the stronghold, to warn whoever is there," Nina stated as they hurried away from the carnage. "We dare not stop. These undead are fast and inexhaustible." Back at the now defeated center camp, a chilling sight awaited any onlooker brave enough to witness it. The fallen, once comrades and friends, now rose with the same fiery glow in their eyes, joining the ranks of the newly summoned undead. This grotesque transformation of the dead into relentless warriors added a horrific new dimension to the Necromancer's army. At the back of the ranks of this terrifying force, the Necromancer stood, observing the devastation his creation wrought with a cold satisfaction. Lifting his arms towards the darkened skies, he shouted, "For you, my Lord Necros!" His declaration was not just a statement of allegiance, but a proclamation of the dark intent that had fueled the creation of this new undead army. As the survivors made their desperate journey to the stronghold, the stakes were higher than ever. With the gods momentarily out of action, and Winter's fate uncertain, the realm's only hope lay in rallying its forces for a counterattack that could stem the tide of darkness unleashed by the Necromancer's unholy ambition. Clash of shadows and bones. In the dimly lit chambers of the dark castle, Eldur received unsettling news with a grimace. A scout from the Elders, out of breath and clearly shaken, rushed in with a dire report. "Their numbers are huge," he relayed with urgency. "The undead have overtaken a camp." Eldur, frowning deeply, questioned the origins of this newfound strength among the undead. How did they get so numerous? He mused aloud, more to himself than anyone else. After a moment's contemplation, he dismissed the need for further inquiry with a wave of his hand. "No matter. We will squash them. Our shadow power will crush them. Send 10 of our best fighters to intercept these walking corpses," he commanded confidently. "Yes, Master," replied the scout, nodding quickly before disappearing to carry out the orders. Sometime later, 10 shadows moved with the speed of night, utilizing their ability to shift from shadow to shadow with supernatural speed. As they approached the undead legion, they prepared themselves for what had always been a routine tactic, moving as shadows among the undead, their mere presence deadly to the reanimated corpses. The undead horde, however, marched with an increased velocity, driven by the godly fire in their eyes that pushed them beyond ordinary limits. As the Elders launched their attack, expecting to easily dissipate through the ranks of undead, as they had done countless times before, they were met with an unexpected resistance. Instead of passing through, it was like colliding with a solid wall. Surprised and disoriented, the Elders fell to the ground. In an instant, the undead were upon them, tearing, biting and clawing with a ferocity and strength that was not just supernatural but divine. The undead overwhelmed the Elders. Within seconds, 4 of the Elders lay destroyed, their forms dissipating into the shadows from whence they came. The remaining 6 tried to retreat, panic setting in, as another 3 were destroyed in their desperate attempt to flee. Only 3 managed to escape, carrying with them the scars of their encounter and the shock of their brethren's demise. The scene was brutal and swift, highlighting the sheer power and relentless nature of the undead. The powerful elders, once feared and revered, lay defeated and scattered by an enemy that had evolved beyond their control. The undead, imbued with divine strength and an unholy resilience, showcased a frightening new reality for all inhabitants of the realm. Even the elders, with all their dark powers, were helpless against this enhanced menace. This devastating encounter served as a chilling reminder of the undead's capabilities and hinted at the dark potential of the Necromancer's latest creations. As the 3 surviving elders returned to their stronghold, their report would sow seeds of fear and doubt among their ranks. The balance of power was shifting, and now every faction in the realm had to reckon with a new, formidable enemy that could very well dictate the fate of their world. Desperation and despair. "Impossible!" Eldur screamed as he slammed his fist down upon the ancient wooden table in the dimly lit war room. The impact echoed through the chamber as he was briefed on the new capabilities of the undead. An elder fighter, his face etched with fear, reported, "Their eyes? They burned with fire." "Fire?" Serana echoed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "They have help from their god. The gods are interfering once again," she concluded grimly. "And yet Nocturna cannot hear my pleas?" Eldur questioned bitterly, his frustration palpable as he grappled with the gods' apparent abandonment. "They were too strong, too fast, and resistant to our shadow," the elder fighter added, shaking his head in dismay. Another elder chimed in, "And their numbers are huge, thousands." "Thousands?" Eldur barked out the word as if it were a curse. "With that many, nothing can stop them." "What about this winter?" Serana suddenly proposed, grasping at any straw that might offer them a chance. "Yes, Winter. He may be the only one who can," Eldur agreed, a new resolve forming. "We need to find him." Meanwhile, Captain Knox and Captain Harris drove their convoy urgently back to the stronghold. As they navigated the rugged terrain, Captain Harris spotted a huge cloud of dust in the distance. "What's that up ahead?" he asked, squinting against the glare of the sun. As they drew closer, the source of the dust became horrifyingly clear. A massive horde of undead, marching at a terrifying speed. The ground shook under the relentless march of countless feet, kicking up clouds of dust that shrouded them in a grim haze. Before they could maneuver or prepare, the horde noticed them. With terrifying speed, the undead turned and charged the convoy. A horde of death, destroying anything in its path. The convoy spun around, the 10 vehicles maneuvering with practiced speed, but it was too little too late. Within moments, the undead swarmed over them, covering the vehicles like ants attacking a fallen fruit, tearing away the metal doors as if they were made of paper. The helplessness of the fighters was palpable as they struggled against the overwhelming force of the overpowered undead. Just 2 vehicles managed to escape, the 2 lead vehicles driven by Captains Knox and Harris. As they sped away from the carnage, Captain Knox turned to Harris, her expression grim. "We've seen these before, but we had silver weapons then. That caused them to become sluggish and easier to kill," she explained urgently. "We have no silver here," Captain Harris replied, his voice heavy with the weight of their dire situation. "If they reach the stronghold, everyone will die." The chapter ends with the 2 captains speeding towards the stronghold, desperation driving them as they face the very real possibility that they may be bringing the news of an unstoppable force directly to the last bastion of human resistance. The fear of what might come if they fail weighs heavily on them, driving them to push their vehicles and themselves to the limits. Desperation at the stronghold. The atmosphere at the stronghold was tense as Elena and Commander Harris surveyed the defenses, their expressions marked by concern. Any news on the convoy? Elena asked, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet of the early dawn. No, replied Commander Harris, shaking his head. Something feels off, Elena added, her intuition on high alert. We need those fighters back here. This place is vulnerable with the small number of fighters we have, Commander Harris stated, his voice carrying a sense of urgency. He was keenly aware of how thinly spread their defenses were, a fact that did nothing to ease his growing anxiety. Well, at least we have these, Elena said, holding up one of the strange tubes left by Winter. Her grip tightened as she pondered their uncertain future. How did he know the elders would betray us, and where is he now? She questioned aloud. Commander Lewis, who had been quietly listening, responded grimly, He knows more than any of us. To him, we are no more than ants fighting each other. He just decides who wins. His tone was bitter, reflecting a mix of respect and resentment towards Winter's enigmatic maneuvers. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a shout from a guard on the watchtower. The convoy is back. His voice was a mix of relief and urgency. Thank God, breathed Elena as she and Commander Harris rushed to meet them. What greeted them, however, was a somber sight. Only 2 vehicles returned, kicking up dust as they halted sharply within the stronghold gates. Knox and Harris climbed out of the vehicles, their faces etched with dread and exhaustion. The gravity of their expressions foretold the grim news before a word was spoken. Commander Harris approached them quickly. What happened? He demanded, looking between Knox and Harris for answers. Knox, her voice steady despite the clear strain, began to recount their harrowing experience. The undead. They've changed. They're not like before. They're faster, stronger, and they tore through our defenses as if they were nothing. Her report painted a vivid picture of the overwhelming power they had encountered. Harris added, They'll be here within 24 hours. They march at a supernatural speed, and nothing we did could slow them down. The implication of his words hung heavily in the air. A silence fell over the group as they processed the news. One of the younger officers, trying to grasp at any hope, suggested, Should we reinforce the walls? Commander Lewis, usually a man of action, shook his head. It would be pointless, he said gravely. This undead horde, with godly power, is too powerful. Nothing can stop them. His statement was not one of defeat, but a stark realization of the dire situation they faced. As they stood in the dim light of dawn, the stark reality set in. The stronghold, once a beacon of safety and resistance, now seemed little more than a fragile shell that could be shattered at any moment by the impending force. The commanders exchanged looks of grim resolve, understanding that their next steps might be their last stand. Unlikely allies. Alex, Nina, Marco, and Rebecca hastened towards the stronghold, vigilantly avoiding any encounters with the undead. We must not engage these undead, Alex stated firmly as they navigated the treacherous landscape. They are too strong. We would all be killed. As they moved closer to their destination, a sudden rustle from the trees caught their attention. Bursting forth at an incredible speed, a small group of undead, obviously left to ambush any stragglers, charged towards them. The small group of survivors looked on in horror, their hearts pounding in their chests. Stand and fight, Alex commanded, squaring his shoulders against the imminent threat. If we go down fighting, Marco added, his voice resolute. The group of now 8 hastily formed a defensive square, with Alex and Marco at the front, bracing for impact. Oh God, Nina whispered, the scene steeped in hopelessness and panic. The odds were overwhelmingly against them. The godly power of the undead meant almost certain death. Just as the undead were about to collide with the desperate survivors, a new force erupted into the fray. 10 lichens sprang from seemingly nowhere, their arrival as sudden as it was savage. A fierce clash erupted. The battle was evenly matched at first, the undead strong and relentless, the Lycans fierce and primal. Then came the howl, the commanding, thunderous howl of the Alpha. Invigorating his pack, the Lycans seemed to draw ferocity from the earth itself, their attacks becoming more aggressive, more coordinated. Slowly the Lycans started to gain the upper hand, until more undead rushed from the surrounding woods. But the Alpha leapt into their path, his presence huge, powerful and primal. With relative ease, he dispatched the small number of undead, while the other Lycans finished up the rest of the group. As the dust settled and the Lycans gathered around their leader, the survivors exchanged worried glances. "From the frying pan," Rebecca muttered, eyeing the formidable beasts that now turned their attention towards them. In an incredible turn of events, the Lycans did not attack. The Alpha approached, his massive form looming over the group, his eyes burning with primal rage. Yet instead of attacking, he stopped short and held up a chrome mask, the mask of winter. Then he pointed towards the Lycan's stronghold. Alex spoke up, his voice laced with urgency. "We need to save our friends. We cannot go that way." The Alpha held Winter's mask up in the air, almost like a symbol, and roared, a deep, resonating sound that filled the air. The other Lycans joined in this primal roar, creating a chorus that echoed through the forest. What did the Alpha know about Winter? Had Winter embedded some unknown knowledge into the Alpha? Something only they knew. Why didn't the Alpha convert the survivors into Lycans? These questions hung in the air as the survivors stood, caught between the remnants of their escape and the cryptic message of a Lycan leader who seemed to hold keys to mysteries even deeper than the ones they faced. The day had brought them an unexpected alliance, but it was clear that the journey ahead would be fraught with new challenges and revelations. The tide turns. The Necromancer, Stephen Lestat, stood atop a hill, gazing down at the relentless march of his undead horde. A satisfied smile curled his lips as he muttered to himself, "We are unstoppable. We have surely won this game." The view of the human stronghold now lay just within sight, the final obstacle in his path to complete dominion. At the stronghold, the remaining survivors watched, with a mix of dread and resignation, as the sea of undead approached. "It's over," Captain Harris whispered, the weight of defeat heavy in his voice. Behind the walls, the team hastily made plans to escape and retreat, knowing full well that their chances were slim and the stronghold would soon be overrun. Meanwhile, back at the Dark Castle, Eldur was deep in conversation with Serana when a scout burst in, his face pale with terror. "They're here," he gasped out, his words sending a chill through the room. Rushing to a vantage point, Eldur's gaze fell upon the massive wave of the Necromancer's undead, their eyes burning with an unnatural, godly power. "What is this?" Eldur exclaimed, disbelief lacing his tone as he struggled to comprehend the scale of the undead force. How has their army grown so vast? "We cannot win this battle," Serana said, her voice a somber echo of Eldur's fear. "We must flee." "If we flee this castle, we lose," Eldur countered, desperation creeping into his voice as he faced the untenable situation. "If we stay, we die," Serana retorted sharply, her pragmatic survival instinct cutting through the despair. The undead horde advanced with a relentless, inexorable pace, their numbers swelling with each passing moment. As the elders watched, it became evident that the undead were not just maintaining their strength. They were growing stronger, each victim of their rampage rising to join their ranks. This exponential growth in power made them an unstoppable force, so potent that no other faction, human or supernatural, could hope to stand against them. The game, set into motion by the gods, seemed poised for a grim conclusion, dominated by the undead. This chilling realization settled over both the stronghold and the dark castle. The undead, once mere pawns in the larger game, had now become the masters of the board, guided by the Necromancer's ruthless ambition and the dark blessings of the god Necros. As the stronghold prepared for a last, desperate flight, and the elders contemplated the unthinkable option of abandoning their ancient seat of power, the landscape of the realm shifted towards a dark new era, an era where no power could stand against the undead's might. The brink of desolation. At the Alpha's treetop stronghold, the situation had grown dire. From his vantage point, high among the ancient trees, the Alpha looked out over a vast, undulating sea of death. The undead, driven by the dark power of Necros, stretched across the horizon, their numbers far surpassing any threat the Lycans had faced before. This was not a small group that could be dispatched with swift, ferocious attacks. This was an overwhelming tide of darkness, each creature infused with supernatural strength, typically marked by fierce primal energy and readiness for battle. The Alpha now sat quietly, almost as if accepting the grim fate that awaited. However, in his grasp, he held the mask of winter, treating it not merely as a relic, but as a symbol, perhaps of hope or an unrevealed plan. This enigmatic behavior suggested that there might be more at play than mere resignation. The Alpha and Winter shared a bond unlike any other. Had Winter, before his apparent demise, foreseen this scenario and imparted knowledge of a final contingency to the Alpha? As the undead marched closer, their numbers swelling and their unholy vigor apparent, the question remained: how could a few Lycans hope to stop this advancing horde of death? The reality was stark. The Lycans could not match the undead in number or power. Across the realm, each stronghold braced for the end. The Necromancer, sensing the imminent victory of his undead legions, issued one last command with a triumphant cry, "For Necros!" At his words, the undead charged with renewed ferocity, a final push to obliterate all resistance. As the undead unleashed their full might, the scene was set for a catastrophic conclusion. The lands of the living stood on the precipice of annihilation, with seemingly no hope of reprieve. As the realm teeters on the edge of ruin, questions swirl like the dark winds that drive the undead forward. Have the undead finally won the game set by the gods? Does the Alpha know some hidden plan, or has he truly accepted his fate? With the forces of life dwindling and the shadows of death growing ever stronger, will anyone survive? Find out in episode 5 of Crimson Dawn, where the final chapters of this epic saga unfold. Will there be light after the dawn, or will the night reign eternal? Stay tuned for the thrilling continuation of a battle that will decide the fate of all who dwell within this haunted world.